Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order. The presentation of our colors tonight is by North Buncombe High School, and the instructor is Master Chief Marino. Please rise.
Ready, cut, forward, march. Colors, hold, left, face, present, colors.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors. Ready, cut. Right, face. Order, colors. Ready, cut. Forward, march.
I ask that you remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. I am looking for a motion to amend the agenda tonight by moving the action item, adoption of the 18-19 budget, and the information item, supplemental information for 18-19 budget, to the November Board of Education meeting, and then to approve the agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda with those changes.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? It's now time for the superintendent's comments. You have a full house, Dr. Baldwin.
That's always a good thing. I want to start by talking about the impact of Hurricane Florence across this state. 72 of our 115 school systems, including Buncombe County schools, were affected by Hurricane Florence in some form or fashion. For us, it was through a school delay, but for many, it was school closings. And it's estimated that the cost of physical damages to school districts and school campuses across eastern North Carolina totals $40 million. I want to add our appreciation for the bill that was recently passed by our legislature that provides flexibility to the instructional hour requirements for those hard-hit districts, as well as salary and pay relief to their teachers and employees. 6 school systems in this state still remain closed through the remainder of this week, and a number of our schools and sports teams have joined the hurricane relief effort. I can see a number of them represented in the audience tonight. Just a few of those include North Buncombe High School and AC Reynolds High School. They were packing food and sorting supplies for evacuees, and I think that evacuation center was very close to Reynolds High School, Ms. Sellers. Irwin's football team actually adopted East Carteret High School and physically went down to that location, provided considerable support. Reynolds and Robertson soccer teams collected money donations at their soccer match. And W.D. Williams, Pisgah, and Hall Creek Elementary Schools all collected supplies and basic essentials. And again, I know we have a number of other schools that are involved in those efforts, and those will need to continue over the next several months. We did receive some very good news from Raleigh this week regarding our school safety equipment grant. we have been approved to receive $120,061 for high school video door access controls. This represents our third Safe Schools Grant Award from the state. And previously, $230,170 was awarded for school mental health support and $333 in additional SRO positions. And we talked about both of those in previous board meetings. I want to thank Mr. Joe Huff and Barry Pace and Clark Wyatt, who are here tonight, as well as fellow members of the School Security Committee for their efforts. And you might recall that School Security Committee is a joint mutual operation with Buncombe County and Asheville City Schools. And the committee will be making a presentation to the Capitol Commission on October 15th. And they will include a very comprehensive security study that will take place for each school campus in both school systems, and will also support funding to improve the low bandwidth in all of our school buildings. And what that will do, and that will take place before the end of the school year, that will ensure that each and every school building allows those first responders clear communication, again, in the event of an emergency. School safety will also be our primary focus at the upcoming District Advisory Council. Board members, want to make sure that's on your calendar. That's going to be at North Buncombe High School. We'll be hosting that event. Again, it'll be made up of all advisory councils across Buncombe County schools, and that will start at 6:00 p.m. I want to thank Christy Cheek for her leadership in making several educational opportunities happen this week. She does that year-round, but especially this week for our CTE students and teachers. On Monday, our middle college students visited local advanced manufacturers, and two of those was ABB and Eaton Corporation. And yesterday we had over 100 of our high school students that attended a Leadership Career Academy. I think Ms. Swanger, this is probably our fourth or fifth year in a row of having that, Biltmore hosting it for us. May even be a little bit longer tradition. But I had an opportunity to hear an excellent panel of experts, and they talked to our students about the hard and soft skills that employers are currently looking at in employees. So it was a very educational experience for all of us. And tomorrow, Linamar, Park Ridge, Mountain Area Workforce Development, and the North Carolina Department of Commerce, they will be hosting 150 teachers. About half of those are coming from Buncombe County, in celebration of Educators in Industry and Manufacturing Day. And it's never too early to plant a seed for our students regarding a future career, maybe even a superintendent out there, here or there. But I want them to talk to me first. Advanced manufacturing, along with health services and hospitality tourism, represent primary career pathways for graduates of our school systems and systems across the state. So that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. It's time for good news. Stacia Harris.
Good evening, Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair, members of the board. We have another full agenda of good news to bring you guys tonight. First up, could Ms. Sellers and Ms. Audrey start walking on down? Ms. Sellers, principal of AC Reynolds High School, is here tonight. She's going to introduce us to one of her students who recently spoke in D.C. at a national convention aimed at empowering young women. So you guys can take the podium.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. So good evening, Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair Franklin, members of the board, and our guest. What an honor for me to introduce to you tonight one of our own AC Reynolds High School seniors, Audrey Meggs. I could not give enough accolades to this young lady. I can still remember the day that I met her when her parents toured our school looking for a place for their daughters to come to high school. First of all, that beautiful smile she's got will capture your heart forever. So we are honored to bring her here tonight. Her dad is with her. Her mom, there's those four-legged members of the family, the pets, had unexpected surgery today and had to have sitter. So her mom regretfully is not with her, but her parents are unbelievably supportive. Quickly upon Audrey's enrollment in 10th grade from a private school setting, I received an email from this Audrey Meggs. I had remembered her, but she wanted to start a Girl Up Club at A.C. Reynolds High School. Well, in that email, I laid out all of my expectations for starting a club at our school. Within days, she had met every single one of those expectations. She wanted to begin a Girl Up Club. I looked that up online because I had not heard of a Girl Up Club, and I thought that is a wonderful organization. It's our largest club on campus now in just 3 years, filled with many young men and women who are wanting to be leaders. Just last year, our club sent 7 bikes to young girls in Malaya, through their own fundraising. Collaboratively under Audrey's leadership, our club is student-led. The sponsors say all they have to do is step back and let it happen. This past summer, and you'll see her photo up here, in July, 350 passionate young advocates from around the world convened for the 7th annual Girl Up Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. For the 3 jam-packed days, these young change makers participated in leadership training, learned from influential speakers, engaged in skills-based workshops, and led an official lobby day on Capitol Hill. Through mentorship by Girl Up experts, celebrity champions, women trailblazers, and gender equality experts, summit participants gained core leadership skills, trained in community building and advocacy, and experienced interacting with members of Congress on Capitol Hill. The summit worked to empower, educate, and embolden the potential of every youth leader there. However, Audrey did not just attend this summit, she actually was one of the national student speakers. Her topic was on the hypersexualization and exploitation of Asian women. At this conference, also, our A.C. Reynolds High School chapter, in only its 3rd year, was named the top 14 Girl Up Club in the world. Girl Up has over 80,000 members. And under Audrey's leadership and her desire to be a leader and to bring this not only to A.C. Reynolds High School, but to Buncombe County, gave us this worldwide recognition. So, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to introduce to you an amazing young woman. I want you to listen carefully to her name because I think you're going to hear it again someday. She may actually be standing in front of there as our next president one day of the United States. Audrey, please come share with our guests here tonight and let them know how you became interested in Girl Up, what this organization means to you, about your experience in Washington, D.C. Audrey Meggs.
Baldwin, members of the school board, ladies and gentlemen, I am so honored to be here with you tonight. On behalf of our club members, thank you for recognizing Girl Up Reynolds at this meeting. I want to personally thank my principal, Ms. Sellers, for her endless support of me and all of her students. It's no wonder that she was deemed the best principal in North Carolina. During the summer of my sophomore year, Ms. Sellers received a long email from me describing my time in DC at the Girl Up Leadership Summit. I had considered myself a women's rights advocate for quite some time, so I wanted to attend an event for people like me, young women passionate about creating a more just world where all genders are created equal. The summit was revelational. I spent 3 days going to workshops, listening to guest speakers, and lobbying on Capitol Hill with girls across the globe. When it was over, I was eager to bring Girl Up back to my own community. For those of you who do not know, Girl Up is an initiative of the United Nations Foundation, helping adolescent girls in developing countries through advocacy and female empowerment. We help women receive the necessities to live a healthy and safe life free of oppression and violence. It focuses on empowering girls by helping them find their voice in societies that discourage them from speaking up. I founded Girl Up AC Reynolds in the fall of 2016, and from there it has only grown. With over 60 members and many more supporters, we have raised over $2,000 for the organization, and we have donated over $1,500 for Helpmate, a local shelter for women who have been domestically abused. Last year, we raised money for 7 bikes for girls who have to travel 9 or 10 miles on foot just to get to school. We have held restaurant nights, tabled at various events, and have aimed to educate our school and community about the importance of empowering girls and women. We also have many guys in our club who are actively seeking to make the world more inclusive for everyone. Girl Up teaches people that their voices matter. This summer, I was fortunate enough to go back to DC for my 3rd Leadership Summit and present a workshop called The Hypersexualization and Exploitation of Asian Women. This workshop centered around the issues Asian American women face, such as lack of representation in the media, and also the gender inequality Chinese girls face in their own country. As an adopted Asian American girl, this presentation was a way for me to speak about my unique experience. Thank you to educators and community members like you for helping us build a platform to encourage our classmates to contribute to our school and the world beyond the classroom. Girl Up Reynolds would not be where it is today without the help of Ms. Sellers and our advisors, Ms. Lewis and Ms. Lampley, who have been with us through excitement and challenges along the way. Thank you very much.
I'll make no promises.
And for our next good news item, we're going to invite our district athletics specialist, David Ball, up. He's here to help us recognize one of the local companies that helps keep our student athletes safe during practice and during games.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baldwin, and our distinguished guests who are here this evening. It is my honor to recognize PT Solutions and the Blue Ridge Division of Emerge Ortho for their outstanding service in providing sports medicine services to Buncombe County schools. These two groups, working in partnership together, provide athletic trainers, team physicians, and sports medicine services to Irwin, North Buncombe, and Robertson High Schools, in Irwin, North Buncombe, and Valley Springs Middle Schools. The scope of sports medicine services provided to these 6 schools include the following: 2 certified licensed athletic trainers to serve each high school and its feeder middle school. They assign a team physician for each school district, and they establish a clinical team with a network of specialists who are engaged with each school to maximize athletic performance, to prevent injury, and to provide treatment and rehabilitation when injuries occur. This sports medicine partnership also provides annual physical exams for our student athletes, pre- and post-concussion testing of our student athletes, required annual concussion training updates for our coaching staffs, AED and CPR training for our coaching staffs, the implementation of a student-athlete athletic training program, and finally, they give special priority to our injured athletes to have access into their injury clinics and into their facilities. I want to especially highlight this evening this sports medicine partnership for their ability to find ways to provide treatment, rehabilitation, and even surgeries for the many students and their families across our school districts who have financial hardships. Madam Chair, we are truly blessed to have such outstanding sports medicine services being provided to our student athletes. Last month, I mentioned that my immediate family and I had 5 surgeries from the sports medicine group that we were recognizing in September. Well, my family and I kind of believe in equality and equal opportunity, and I want you to know we've had 4 surgeries from this sports medicine partnership. Tonight, in recognition of the outstanding sports medicine services being provided to Buncombe County schools, we would like to recognize and show our appreciation to PT Solutions and Emerge Ortho Blue Ridge Division. At this time, I would like to invite Eric Shiflett of PT Solutions and Dr. Judd Garbarino, Dr. Jay Jansen, Dr. Michael Shea, because of the front, to come forward. I would also ask Mr. Bryant, Ms. Franklin, Ms. Churchill, Ms. Pate, and Dr. Baldwin to come forward for the presentation of plaques and the taking of pictures.
Good.
Say just a quick word. We appreciate this award. David called me up and asked me what I should put on it, and typically we've been Blue Ridge Bone and Joint, and now we're a little bit Emerge Ortho. So I asked Michael, what is our name? And it was sort of, we changed to Emerge Ortho Blue Ridge Division. Everything's pretty much the same, but we joined a larger consortium trying to stay independent. We really appreciate the opportunity to work with Buncombe County Schools, all the teachers, students, athletes, coaches. It's been great. We're actually blessed to be healthcare providers, and we really enjoy what we do. Really appreciate what you all do with education. You know, sports we think is a great thing, but there are certain times I think it's overblown and misguided, and we kind of got to get back to the school side of things. But Michael and I each have a freshman in the STEM school here. I've been through a little bit the gamut. I have 3 college kids. I don't know whether I should say this or not. I have 1 as a private school graduate, high school, and 2 from Buncombe County. And the Buncombe County ones are winning a little bit. Thank you very much. You all keep up the good work, and we're going to try to do our best and try to keep people as healthy as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. As a board member, I enjoy sitting on the sidelines and watching how quickly you guys come to the attention of our injured players. Thank you. It's your turn.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Dr. Baldwin, members of the board, I have the best announcement of the evening. I get to talk about the principal of the year, Mr. Brian Chandler. So, Mr. Chandler, come on down. The West Buncombe staff to stay standing. Let's see how many staff members came to pay honor to you, and did you give them a trade day or something? Is there, He didn't know. Surprise, and thank you all for supporting your principal and your assistant principal, Robin Payne. So thank you for being here tonight. Mr. Chandler is a 24-year educator in Buncombe County. He is currently serving as principal at West Buncombe Elementary, came from Oakley Elementary. He is a very compassionate principal. He knows his students by name, but he has high expectations out the roof. And everyone knows what the expectations are, and they really strive to meet those expectations as evidenced by who's sitting in front of you this evening. Mr. Chandler is an instructional leader. You can do a classroom visit with him, and he is quick. He knows students by name. He knows what teachers are doing in their classrooms, and instruction is moving, and that is quite the honor. So we appreciate all that you do, and we are so excited that you are our Principal of the Year, and we're also excited that you're going to the regional competition, and there's a good bit of competition in him, so we just hope that the rest of the state will see how wonderful he is.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mr. Chandler, there's a plaque on behalf of Buncombe County Schools in recognition of your outstanding leadership service to public education.
Very honored and blessed to be principal of such a fine school. Madam Chair, you see,
I wondered what you gave them to get them here.
it was a complete surprise.
Was it? Yeah.
I thought that it was just going to be my wonderful wife, and my mom and dad are here, and I appreciate them. My mom and dad and my little family, Honey Joe and Quill and Kendall, and my mother-in-law. Started with Buncombe County 24 years ago at North Buncombe Elementary School.
I started to say, we trained that boy.
And when I started, I always kept this in mind. My dad always taught me, don't you ever do anything half what? and I've strived to do that my whole life, and tried to do that as a teacher and assistant principal at West Buncombe, then at Oakley as principal, and now back to where I love it. We call it Best Buncombe.
Okay.
And if you'll notice their shirts, they have the W marked out with a B. So proud of this school. They make being a principal so easy. They're willing, they care, they're remarkable. And I get to sit at the helm of that, Dr. Baldwin. I know how you feel sometimes, but I'm just so honored and so blessed. I actually have my deacon from my church here, Mr. Joe, and he's here, one of your county commissioners, and he's here to support me, and I appreciate him too. But just honored to get this award, and tell you a little story. My staff members know these, but my wife, I love country music, old country music, Willie and Waylon and Merle, and she bought me XM radio, and I have Willie's Roadhouse playing all the time, driving my kids to school, and I have Quill and Honey Joe. Quill's in kindergarten this year at West Buncombe, and Honey Joe's in second grade, and my wife, she said, please, 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 at least 2 days a week, play some Christian music. Play the light, please, just 2 days a week. Don't make them listen to old country every day. So I've tried to abide by that. And there was a song that came on yesterday, and it was called He Is So Good to Me. And I thought about that song and my staff, and what I want is I want for everybody that meets me to say, He is so good to me. And that's how I want to try to live my life, and I appreciate you all, and I love you, and I thank you, and this is a great, great honor, and so thank you.
Time, 3, 2, 1, smile.
Good grief, Brian Chandler. How many women do you have in your covey?
To continue the good news section of this wonderful evening, and this time we're going to look at two schools who have statistically exceeded what the state expects from their students each and every year. When you think about the data that you'll be seeing in just a few minutes from Mr. Earwood, you'll see that there's a very complex formula that predicts where a student should score. And it's acceptable. We are so proud when schools and students meet growth. Well, we have two schools with us this evening that continue to exceed growth. So first, we're going to recognize Emma Elementary, who has exceeded growth for 5 consecutive years.
Woo-hoo.
5 consecutive years. They do it? Well, there's some very special folks sitting in the audience. We have Jeremy Stowe, last year's principal, Joan Castello, this year's principal, and Carla Shipman, our assistant principal at Emma Elementary, and passionate, hardworking staff, in which both schools have, that we're recognizing this evening. But I'd like for Emma to come forward. So Jeremy and Joan, and then everybody, you gather for a picture. Would you like to say anything? Sure.
Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, and members of the audience, I would love to take credit for this. I invited Mr. Stowe to come because, as you know, Emma has an incredibly dedicated staff. They work hard every single day with children that face many, many challenges. So really, this honor goes to the faculty and staff at Emma Elementary School. Stowe, even though he's now principal at Evelyn Intermediate, he'll get our students later. And also I invited Mrs. Devane. Unfortunately, she had a death in her family, but she was the principal for 2 years, and then Mr. Stowe for 3 years. So thank you. It's a real honor to recognize Emma and the strength of the staff and the hard work. They don't leave the school at 3 o'clock every day. A lot of times the parking lot is full at 5 and after until a custodian runs them out of the building at 6. So thank you. It's been my honor and pleasure to come as your interim principal for the last few months. So thank you.
Is that what that said? What's all that letters? Okay, I was reading it right. Somebody told me once and I'm eating it. Oh, yeah.
To bring down Dr. David Robinson and Wendy Hanna of Valley Springs Middle School. They have exceeded growth 6 consecutive years. Valley Springs, we welcome you to join us as well.
Dr. Baldwin, Madam Chair, members of the board, we all know I'm new at Valley Springs, and I just want to convey how honored I am to be trying to integrate myself into this excellent, high-achieving school community. I sent out a school-wide email the other day congratulating my staff, telling them they're the ones that deserve the pat on the back. Mr. Birchfield, I've talked with him. He's probably laying block this evening, or he would have been here. As you know, he's building a new house. But it's just an honor to be at Valley Springs. It's an amazing place. I've been fortunate in my education career to be at some excellent schools, none more excellent than the one I'm at right now. The staff's dedicated. The parents are committed to the education of their children. The children are committed to their own education. And it's an atmosphere that you just really have to experience to appreciate how great it is. But I certainly want to recognize Dr. Hanna, Bob Washell, who couldn't be here tonight, also one of our assistant principals, Ms. Katrina Fox, our district teacher of the year from the Robertson district, and all the other folks that make up the school community of Valley Springs. It's a great place to be, and I'm honored to be there.
In recognition of your continued growth and student growth as measured by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, congratulations.
Final piece of good news to recognize this evening. A student from Irwin High School recently won a scholarship through Evelyn Charities. And so will Dave White please come down and tell us more about this award?
Hi, everyone. My name is Dave White, and I serve on the board of Evelyn Charities. Each May, Evelyn Charities Andrew Institute for Leadership and Public Service, along with generous support from Express Employment Professionals, host LeaderCast. And LeaderCast is a worldwide leadership event. High school students are a very important part of that event. Evelyn and our sponsors have tickets available for each high school, and a large portion of the audience is our high school students. A big part of that event is our Young Leadership Award, our Young Leaders Award, and that's presented every year to a high school student in recognition of their leadership, public service, and also an essay written on their leadership philosophy and what they've learned during that LeaderCast event. And this year, I'm very honored to present this award to Deanna Clark.
I didn't know I was going to be speaking. I'm very honored. This was my second year attending LeaderCast. My first year was my freshman year. I am a senior at Irwin. I moved to Asheville in 2015, so kind of new to Buncombe County still. I didn't know where I was going tonight. I've had some great leaders. Mr. Mills, he's one of my Student Government Association sponsors, as well as Brian Gonzalez, who was a Teacher of the Year a couple years ago. I've been really blessed to attend Irwin. It is very different from where I grew up. I grew up in Bluff City, Tennessee, which probably none of you have heard of. It's right outside of Bristol, and if Bristol doesn't ring a bell, right outside of Johnson City. Yeah, I don't. I do a lot through the school because I don't have a lot to do at home. So that was something that I wrote about in my essay. I'm in like Beta Club and Key Club and our anti-bullying club, you know, everything. All the teachers know me. I actually want to be a teacher, so this is great. So that's all I have.
So there's a certificate and there's also a $500 award that comes with it.
School board meeting starring Pat Bryant.
Our curriculum feature this evening also has good news. We saw significant growth in our school performance last year, and Mr. Airwood has a wonderful report for you to see the areas of growth. We certainly have been analyzing the data and looking at areas that we can improve, and I assure you that those improvements are coming through by way of school improvement plans that will be due in just a couple of weeks. But let's go back to 2018 and see how we ended that school year.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Baldwin, my friends, it's a privilege to present.
You can turn to us and call us your friends. My heart hurts.
It is such a privilege to present your most favorite curriculum feature of the year. So, with that being said, it is a lot more pleasant to present this year's data than it was last year, to be quite honest. As we said, we're going to see some tremendous improvement in what happened with Buncombe County schools. I'm going to spend a good bit of time tonight. It's going to be a little bit different because, to be honest with you, our data picture is a little incomplete. There's a lot of data we still have not received, specifically in the areas of growth. We have a brand new accountability model that we're using based on the Every Student Succeeds Act. which we're probably familiar with No Child Left Behind. This is what's replaced No Child Left Behind. So with that, it used to be I started off and I said, okay, this is what we've got for the federal side. This is what we've got for the state side. We now have an accountability model that is the same for both the federal and the state. So I just get to present it once. Looking at first and foremost is our school performance grades. This is front page, if you will. This is our A through F and where that's derived from. What we see, and when we do this, we're using current year scores to derive our grades based on a level 3 and above. Now, that's a change. The federal government always required 4 and above. Now we use 3 and above for that. Students must be enrolled for at least half a year or half a semester to count in the accountability model. Again, that is a change. Used to be if you were enrolled for 1 day, you counted for proficiency. And it had to be 70 or 140 days to count for growth. Now it's half a year for both. Indicators must have 30 data points. This is probably one of the most significant changes that maybe caught us a little by surprise. We're always used to 30 students, but now it's 30 data points when you combine math and reading. That's really 15 students that would cause a subgroup to populate. So that's a pretty significant change. The other, what I would consider probably the most dramatic change in our accountability model is that for each subgroup that has enough data, they receive a separate grade for each subgroup, an A through F grade. So for instance, you can see the subgroups that we measure on. Each one of those subgroups receives a grade for a school. Now that becomes important because that leads to how we identify schools under the federal model. The federal model recognizes what they call comprehensive support and improvement schools, and there's some criteria for that, and targeted support and intervention schools, improvement schools. And based on the grades for these subgroups, that's how you're identified, okay? Continuing on, another impactful feature of the school performance grades that's been added under the new model is a much higher importance on our English learner subgroups. In grades 3 through 8 and 10, we now have an indicator for their progress based on the access test. In terms of us trying to exit those students or have them become proficient in English over a certain number of years, depending on their level when they entered school. The ACT and ACT work keys have now been combined into a single indicator. For ACT, our students take that in 11th grade, so that score is held until they're in the 12th grade when some of those students may also have an opportunity to take ACT work keys. So you have 2 opportunities to become proficient in that indicator. English learners in their first year are not included in the SPG model, the school performance grade model. In the second year, they are included for growth, but it's not until the third year that they're included for both growth and proficiency. So that's a change as well. And finally, one thing that has remained constant is that we are required to test 95% of our students in each of our subgroups, and that's been consistent for a number of years. So what are those indicators we're looking at? In grades 3 through 8, we're looking at ELA and math, both proficiency and growth. They factor into the grade. Science, grade 5 and 8, both proficiency and growth factor into the grade, and our English learner progress. High schools, we're looking at English 2, NC Math 1, and new for this year, NC Math 3. That becomes the math indicator, depending on when a student takes Math 1, which one counts for that student. And that's proficiency and growth for English and math. What has changed is biology. Biology is now only included for proficiency, not growth. And that's just a function of how the Every Student Succeeds Act is written, that you couldn't include growth for anything but reading and math in high school. We have math course rigor, which measures the students that pass NC Math 3 or above. ACT and ACT work keys, our 4-year cohort graduation rate, and finally the English learner progress. This is a neat little graphic that kind of breaks it down. It looks a little overwhelming, but trying to fit everything in.
Says that for my benefit because I'm all the ways the one that says I don't understand.
No, not really. It's just the way things are grouped. We think of the 80-20, 80%, 20% proficiency and growth, but the indicators don't necessarily line up that way in the federal model. So even though those are still the indicators, where they're counted is a little bit different to match what the federal government requires under the Every Student Succeeds Act. So you can see the English and reading on the left side for the elementary and middle, and the English learner progress. Those are the academic achievement indicators. In the elementary middle school model, you're allowed to have another academic indicator, the other, and that's where we include science. So on that level, you can include growth for the 3 through 8. And then finally, you're required to have a school quality or student success indicator. And what North Carolina chose to do was use growth in that indicator. So that's where they put the growth. So on that side, the 80-20 matches really well. It's the other side that becomes a little more complicated. When you look at the indicators for academic achievement, you see the English and the math, and then you see growth. Growth is an academic achievement for high schools, not a school quality student. And that's, again, it's a function of how the ESSA is written, okay, how you have to do it. And you see the cohort graduation rate and the English learners' progress. Now, the school quality or student success indicators are the biology, and again, it's only proficiency. You're not allowed to put growth into that school quality success indicator. ACT work keys, and math course rigor. Okay. Now, the second piece that is significant with Every Student Succeeds Act is we had to develop long-term goals. Again, if you remember No Child Left Behind in our annual measurable objectives, which said that in 14 years, 100% of our students were going to be proficient. And we smiled and we said, yeah, that's wonderful. All right, ESSA has given us the flexibility to set what I would consider more reasonable goals. North Carolina has a 10-year goal plan, which means every school has to improve by the same amount with each subgroup. Okay, and the theory being that if every school matches that goal, then the state as a whole will meet their goal. And it uses current year scores for grades 3 through 8, ELA and math. What's different is when do we use the English 2, the math 1, and math 3, because they're specific grades. We measure English 2 when the students get to 10th grade, so depending on when they take it, and most students take English 2 in 10th grade, so that one's pretty obvious. It's the math 1 and math 3 that are not, because most of our students take math 1 in 9th grade and math 3 in 10th grade, depending on the way they've entered, if they took it in middle school. But those scores are held until those students are into 11th grade. It's also, and this is what's been very confusing, is because our long-term goals are based on levels 4 and above, which everything else we do is 3 and above. So we've had a hard time, we've got to transition. Okay, long-term goals, we got to just think about that. It does include all students, unlike our school performance grades. Remember, those school performance grades exempted some of our EL students and some of our students that weren't enrolled with us. But if you're enrolled for a day and you test, you're included in the long-term goals. And once again, the 95% participation rule applies. So it's used with purpose, and this is where long-term goals become extremely important to us, because those schools that are identified as comprehensive support and improvement or target support and improvement, the long-term goals are the way we can exit those identifications. So meeting our long-term goals becomes really important. Again, you have to have 30 data points, but it's math and reading separately. So now we're back to 30 students for long-term goals. And it involves all K-12 EL learners are included in this, not just the grades 3 through 8 and 10, as it is with our school performance grades. So again, each of these subgroups has its own long-term goal, okay? So let's look at our data, or what we have for last year. And again, I said it was to me, it was a tremendous year, and we'll see that. Buncombe County had 93% of its schools receive a grade or C or better, and you can see how that compares to the state. That is quite a bit a difference from the state. We had 3 schools that received an A, Early College, Middle College, and Discovery Academy. And what we noticed when we looked at this, that's very typical of schools that received an A, that it's not your typical comprehensive schools. It's more of your early colleges and special type of schools that received an A. It's difficult. 20 schools received a B, again, way above the state average there. 17 schools received a C, and again, it's misleading to see that we're below the state average, but it's because we had so many A and B schools that caused that. And we did have 3 schools that received a D. Now, the part that I think is most gratifying is growth. And you're going to see why I say that in a few slides, but we had 36 of our schools that met or exceeded growth this year. Again, you can look at how that compares to the state. 19 schools exceeded growth. And again, they're listed there. And we've already mentioned 2 of those schools that for special recognition. And what that means to us, and that's the challenge to all of our schools that are on this list, is it can be done again. There is no ceiling to how many times you can exceed growth. Okay? 17 schools met expected growth. When you have a year like this, sometimes that gets overlooked. But as I tell our principals and teachers, green is good. Green is the color we associate with meeting growth. We've got to remember that green is good. Meeting growth is a good thing. And you can see where we are. Again, it looks a little misleading that we only had 40%, but it's because we had so many exceeding growth that becomes the case. And you can see those schools. We did have 6 schools that did not meet growth, which is below the state average, but it's still not our goal. Our goal is every school meet or exceed growth, and that is an achievable goal. And you can see those schools there. I put this up because I just want to kind of look at our college and career ready. I think we always need to keep that in mind where we are in that realm. Again, it's for the federal side, but it's good for us too, because that should be our target, is to have our students achieving at a 4 and a 5. And you can see where we relate in terms of the state. But here's the question, and I think it's the most important question. What exactly do these school performance grade really measure? So looking at this graph on the bottom, okay, running horizontally, that's our percent of economically disadvantaged students as measured by our free and reduced lunch rates. On the vertical axis, that's achievement or proficiency. Every one of these dots represents a school in North Carolina. So it's looking at their proficiency rate, okay? The red dots are Buncombe County schools. So you can see, and this is for math, I will, as a point of reference, this is 2016-17 data because we don't have 2017-18 data yet. But I guarantee you it's going to look just like this because it has for every year they've been doing this. This is what the patterns look like. And you can see it is a very high correlation between achievement and socioeconomic status. Okay, the higher the free and reduced lunch rate, the lower the achievement. And keep in mind, this is 80% of the grade we're looking at, okay, based on that factor. It's the most highly correlated factor for achievement. And you can see that it's even more highly correlated for reading. So I think that issue becomes more pronounced in reading. But then we see the same socioeconomic status, but compared to growth. And you can see there is absolutely no correlation between economic status and growth. What determines growth is what happens in our schools, in our classrooms. That's what determines growth, okay? And that's what we're responsible for. Unfortunately, it's only 20% of the grade. And as Dr. Baldwin has said a number of times, it's why that model has got to be at least 50-50, all right? Because it needs to recognize what we can control. Now, one of the other myths that I'm confronted with in my position a lot is, well, you just can't grow this student. High-performing students, low-performing students, you just can't grow them. Well, folks, there's the answer to that question, where you see achievement compared to growth. And across all achievement levels, we see schools that grow and schools that don't grow. Okay, so we can grow students regardless of their achievement level. And I've visited a number of schools, and we've kind of shown how that works. So now let's switch gears and just look at some of our other indicators. And I do want to point out, every one of our schools has an impact on our graduation rate. This is not just a high school. I would argue that in some cases it's more of an elementary issue, because if we don't reach those students early, then the long-range impact just doesn't happen. Our graduation rate for the 2017-18 school year was 87.8, compared to the state of 86.3. If you notice, it was a slight dip, and I argue that that's going to happen. Okay, we're going to see that, especially when you continue to rise. At some point, you're going to see slight variations. It's not what we're after, and I can guarantee you we're working to improve that, but it's not surprising. We also had a new way of calculating the graduation rate in North Carolina, which had some impact on that. Some students that in years past we were able to not include, we were forced to include this year. And those are students who enrolled in our schools who are not on track to graduate. We used to not have to count them, but now we do. ACT, I really like looking at our ACT data because that tells us, okay, yes, we know how we're doing compared to North Carolina, but how are we doing compared to national standards in a nationally normed test? Is what we're teaching transcending North Carolina? And as you can clearly see over the trend, and I like to look at the trend, our trend has been up for the previous several years. Which means that the work we're doing in the classroom is translating to national standards. And you can see our comparison to the state. So, it's great to look at our data, it's great to celebrate, but if that's all we do, we're not really having an impact that we need to. So how do we use data to improve instruction? We look at our data, we formulate reasons for why did we see what we see, we look at the areas of need, we make plans, we adjust our instruction, and then we evaluate it again. That's the data analysis sequence model. We make sure that our school improvement goals, and you heard that our schools are finishing up their school improvement plans, getting ready to submit them, but those goals need to be in line with identified needs. And some of those needs we've seen from their targets based on their target support and improvement class identifications. So we want to make sure we address those areas. Teacher and principal effectiveness. I put October. I think I'm being a little ambitious with that, with the delay and everything we've seen. I'm thinking November we'll see teacher effectiveness and principal effectiveness. And it's a school improvement model that we can use to work with teachers and identify some areas there. Targeted professional development. Nobody knows more than you do that there are limited funds to pay for professional development. So we have to be very strategic in where we use them. We have to use our data to identify our needs and target those needs with our professional development. All of our learning targets are based on North Carolina standards, which allows us to use high impact strategies to improve our growth, and a lot of that is found in our PLCs at the teacher level. That's where they're doing that. I would argue that's the most important data we generate is what's happening in that individual classroom and what they're doing in those PLCs. And finally, our instructional coaches. We look at our data, look at our needs, and that way we can strategically place the personnel to address the needs within the county. So, if you have trouble sleeping at night and you want something to put you to sleep, I recommend you go to one of these sites and look at data. You can look at spreadsheets until your eyes literally are too heavy to keep open. And that's about it. Thank you.
Well, you know, Mr. Earwood, I really appreciate your efforts to help me understand, and I am doing better. Maybe, one of these days I'll get it down pat.
That's
but
my PDP goal.
They'll change the rules before that happens. But thank you very much. Board members, do you have questions for Mr. Earwood? Would you hazard a question?
I have one, Madam Chair. On the ACT, How is that, the state, that's a requirement now. Is there a cost to that for students?
For our students in 11th grade, every 11th grade student takes the ATT. That cost is funded by the state.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thanks, Steve. I like to joke with you. At this time, we don't have any public comment. We will move to the action agenda. I'll remind you that we took the budget off, and we will put that on for next month. Avery's Creek Elementary School Art and Music Action Addition Project, authorization to award the contract. I'm looking for a motion. Are there questions?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you. I was just thinking I didn't ask for questions. Are there any questions from the board? All right, thank you. I have a motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is the Community High School water line easement and transfer. It's the motion to authorize execution of the owner's certificate of completion and closeout documents necessary to transfer the new water line at Community High School to the city of Asheville. Are there any questions in this regard? We must have water. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Could a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item on the agenda is the NCSBA voting delegates form, and I mentioned to you that we would have to nominate four, let's see, there are 6 of us attending that convention in November in Greensboro, and we can have 4 people as voting delegates. I would like to recuse myself. I would entertain a motion for nomination. That would be names for nomination. No, I don't want any motions representing us in Greensboro.
I'm happy to serve as the alternate.
Okay.
So that would mean Donna, Amy, Max, and Pat, I'm nominating.
All right. Any?
I'm fine with that.
I'm sorry?
I'll do it.
Okay, good. And Max? That means you have to get up early that morning, Diana.
It's the afternoon.
Max. And Pat, you ready to do that?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. Donna, Max, Pat,
Mr. Rhodes,
and Amy. Okay. So I believe that we've just, by consensus, chosen our people. Ms. Matthews, thank you very much. Moving right along. Our consent agenda, we have the minutes for the September 6th regular meeting session. We have the personnel report, advisory council request to change a member, resolution approving the subleasing a portion of Inca Intermediate School property to Inca Fire Department, Inca Candler Fire Department. And I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Thank you. Do I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Then our next meeting is the Countywide Advisory Council meeting on October 6th at 6 o'clock at North Buncombe High School. And the next regular meeting for the Board of Education is November the 1st in the Minotaurium here at 175 Bingham Road. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Thank you. Could I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's go home.